Hello Hopper. So you want to play a game of Hop but you don't want to read the rules? I got you covered. In this video I'm going to show you how to play the game, all the 3 levels, and also give you some pro tips. First things first, rotate the box. The arrow in the O is going to point to the first player, in this case, you. Inside you're going to find the rulebook and on the back the info book. Make sure to check it out because it has information about the physics concepts behind the game and you can learn it, in a very accessible way. Next, you're gonna find some boards. There are 3 types: the effects, Hamiltonian and movements. A lot of tokens. Some of them come in a cardboard, I already popped them out. And then a lot of cards. We're gonna have the Hamiltonian cards, 2 of them, electrodes, 4, and effects, 7. Everything else are side cards. So let's set it up. The order doesn't matter, could be like this, but I like to keep everything organized. The rest of the cards can go to the side. Then you're gonna set up the movement boards. Let's start by putting them in Bachelor level. The Hamiltonian, which we are not going to play for now, need to come in the Master, so let's just face it down. And the effects. Okay, so now we are ready to play. In the game, you play as physicists, but not very good ones. You just broke a very expensive machine. This is your machine. And you must find the responsible one before the professor arrives. Your PhD is at risk, so be careful not to get shocked. How does the game start? In the beginning, each player is going to pick one color from the 4 possible ones. In this case, I'm going to pick yellow. I'm going to give the green to you. You start by positioning the electrode cards onto the machine. With 2 players, you position them diagonally, as such. With 3 players, you make a triangle and you remove one side card. With 4 players, you play in teams. In this case, the yellow and the green play together against the purple and the pink. It's very important that when you play in teams, that you are facing your team member. In this case, the yellow, me, and the green, you, would be face to face against the purple and the pink. This way, as you go in turns, you always switch between one team and the other. Let me set up for 2 players. Then you're going to grab all the electrodes of the same color and put them on top of your source or electrode. The goal of the game is that each player is going to try to move their electrons, these little pieces, across the board to reach the opponent and create a short circuit. The person that gets short circuited loses and the others are safe for now. How does the game go? At each turn, you always play 2 of the 4 available movements. What does it mean by available movements? Before you play, the player on your left is going to block 1 of the 5 possible movements. To do so, they are going to grab the nipple of your color. If I'm yellow, player is going to grab my yellow nipple and put it on top of one of the movements. In this case, the double on hopping. That means that in my first turn, I only have all the other 4 available movements to play. And I can play 2 of them, the same or different. It does not matter. After, it's your turn. And so I'm going to grab the green nipple and block another movement. It can be the same if you wish. It it can also be different. When it comes back to me playing, the other player must change the position of the token, for example, to the Newton's cradle. This is why it's important that they use the token of your color, so you always know which one you are blocked and which one you cannot be blocked again. The game has 3 levels: Bachelor, Master and Doctorate or PhD. So let's start with the Bachelor. First, you see that each card in your machine represents one atom that can host at most 2 electrons with a spin up or with a spin down, but never 2 electrons that share the same spin, either up or down. It doesn't matter. The spin is a property of electrons, it's a quantum property that, unlike mass or charge, it can have 2 directions instead of values. In this case, it can point down or up. And I read it up and down because there's the little bars that allow me to know that the orange corresponds to the up and the blue to the down. So let's check the 5 possible movements. The first one is hopping. It allows me to hop from one side to the other by preserving the spin. I can either go in this direction or that direction. I cannot go diagonally, and be aware that it doesn't really matter where this card is and how is it facing. I always go with the same spin. If I spin up, I go to the spin up. And if I'm on the spin down, I go to the spin down. Next, we have the double on hopping. The double on hopping allows 2 electrons sharing the same side to move together, either horizontally or vertically, but never diagonally. Third in the movement, we have the quantum Newton's cradle. You may have seen a Newton's cradle are these desk poles that bump into each other. Imagine, for example, that we have this situation. We're using the quantum Newton's cradle. The first electron can reach a line of electrons that share the same spin in such a way that the last one is going to be pushed out. For example, if I have multiple, all of them share the same spin down. The first one goes in and the last one goes out. It's important in this movement that you have a place to start, so an empty site with an empty spin down in this case to start the movement and an empty spin down to finish it. You can do this, of course, also in any other direction, but you cannot change direction. For example, this one cannot go here and that one there. This is not possible. The fourth movement is the spin flip. It allows you to exchange a spin within the same site. For example, a spin down can go to a spin up, and a spin up can go to a spin down. The fifth movement available in the Bachelor is the quantum tunneling. As I said, you cannot share the same spin in the same site with 2 electrons. So you may be able to bypass it or go through. In quantum physics, electrons can pass potential barriers. In this case, your electron can pass other electrons and, of course, end in the same spin. This can happen with multiple electrons, it's okay. You can, for example, if you are here, you can bypass there. But again, you cannot change direction. So you cannot go here to there. Importantly, all these movements, all of them, can be used to enter or exit a source. For example, I can use a quantum tunnel to go there, and I end with a spin down. Once you exit the source, sometimes, for example, like the hopping or the quantum tunnel, you have to choose which spin you are going to, but this is okay. You can choose, you are free to do as you wish. Also, all the movements should start with your own color, but can involve electrons of other colors. For example, if I'm like this, I can do a double unhopping to move you together with me. Or, in a situation like this, I can use a quantum cradle that is going to push your electron away. And that is all for the bachelor level. It should be a fast game of 5 minutes. As you can see, there is no way to block the other player. So a pro tip, if you want to win at the bachelor level, you should just be really fast at reaching your opponent's electrode. The first one to get there is going to win. Next, we have the master level. In the master level, we are going to keep the movement as it is. We are going to flip the Hamiltonian, and the effect is going to be turned like this as to help us. So, what happens in the master level? Energy in physics is conserved, and so it is in the game. In the master level, if you want to play any of these 5 movements, you need to offset the energy. How does it work? If the energy is going to increase because we do one of these movements, we must pay the corresponding amount of energy tokens from our hand to the table. If the energy decreases, we are going to get these corresponding tokens back to our hands. But how do we know how many tokens to exchange? Well, that's why physicists have the Hamiltonian. It's an object that allows them to compute the energy of a quantum system. In our case, our Hamiltonian is going to be composed of 2 terms, the magnetic field and attractive interactions. You can later play on with the repulsive interactions, but I suggest that we start with attractive. Each field has its own contribution to the energy. The magnetic field tells you that now the spin up, that means the orange here, is going to be 1 energy more energetic than the electrode. And the spin down is going to be 1 energy less energetic than the electrode. What does it mean? That means that if I do a hopping from my electrode to the spin down, I'm going to reduce the energy by 1. So I'm going to receive 1 energy from the board. Hopping to the spin up means I'm going to have to pay 1 energy to do the movement. If I use the spin flip to go from the spin up to the spin down, I'm going to lower by 2 energies that I should get from the board. If you wish, the spin up is as if it's a +1 energy, the electrode is 0, and the spin down is -1. So I go from +1 to -1 and I receive 2 energies. Now, if my electron goes back to the electrode, in this case, it's going from the spin down to the electrode, that is going to cost me 1 energy, which I must place to the table. If there are no energies either to give or to receive, you cannot do the movement. There is a second contribution to the energy, which are the interactions, in this case, attractive. With attractive interactions, electrons enjoy sharing the same site. That means that every time we are going to create a pair of electrons, we are going to receive 1 extra energy. And breaking this pair is going to cost you 1 energy. It's important to note that the color of the electrons does not matter for the energy conservation, and it is the player who is doing the movement that must exchange the energy. If I do this, I will be the one receiving 1 energy, not you. And that is all for the muscle. So to recap, you must block, play 2 of the 4 available movements, and always remember that you need to conserve your energy. If you have a hard time remembering the energy conservation rules, that's why I have here a little help. For example, in the middle, you have the conservation rules in the presence of the magnetic field, and if you are playing with attractive interactions, you only look at these 2 contributions. If you are playing with repulsive, you look at these 2 other contributions. That should help you. To play the PhD level, you only need to turn the movement in such a way that is showing the doctorate, and you must also turn the effect board. You can already randomly place all the 7 cards. The game goes always the same way. You always play 2 of the 4 available movements, and in the first 4 movements you keep doing energy conservation as we just did in the master level. But now there is a 5th different movement. You no longer have access to the quantum tunneling. Instead, we have the physics defense. Once we play the physics defense, we unlock the possibility of playing the effect cards. So imagine, for example, in my turn, I'm blocked from playing the Newton square. And because with 2 players we start with 2 energies, my first movement is going to be to play the hopping. And I choose the spin down in such a way that I get 1 extra energy. My second movement can be to play the physics defense. In which case, now I have access to play as many effects as I can afford whenever I want during my turn. For example, they cost 3, 2 and 1 energies. And if I want to buy a long range hopping, I only have to spend 1 energy. This is going to allow me to move my electron from the source, for example, diagonally. And you see, because I just paid 1 energy there, I will not receive 1 energy from the table. I still have 2 energies left, so I can buy something else. For example, for 1 energy, I want to buy a superconducting vortex. The tokens are here for the orange cards, and I'm going to place my vortex on the board. Here, for example. And this costs me 1 energy. I still have 1 energy left, but I don't have to play if I don't want it. In this case, I'm done. At the end of my turn, now the cards I just played become more expensive, whereas the others are cheaper. And also, all the tokens can turn into effects. For example, the vortex is going to make my electron turn in whatever direction I choose, one side after the turn of each player. So, after my turn, my electron is now there, and it's your turn to play. After your turn, the electron is going to come here, after my turn, it's going to be there, so on and so forth. It's important to note that tokens cannot be placed anywhere. They cannot affect an electron. For example, here, my vortex affects all these 4 sides around them. One of them is an electrode, so this is not a good positioning to my vortex. 2 tokens can also not affect each other. For example, imagine I have a heat source, which is here, that I want to place in this side. This is not possible because, again, the vortex is influencing these 4 sides and the heat source this side, so they are in conflict. I can place my heat source here without any issue. As you can see, the possibility of having effects means that now you can have different game dynamics that allow you to destroy your opponent's strategy. Here in the PhD level, it's not enough to be the fastest. You need to think and use all the effects to your advantage. Let me quickly go over all the effects so you don't have any doubts about them. The first that I have here is my vortex card. As I said, placing a vortex means that after each player's turn, all the electrons that are around this vortex are going to turn at the same time, always preserving the same spin. On the back, we have the microwave cavity. The microwave cavity, when placed between 2 sides, means that all the electrons in one side are going to be sent in the direction of the arrow. If there is already an electron there, then the microwave cavity does nothing. My yellow electron will just remain where it is. Even if I have like this, for example, my electron on the spin up is going to move, but the other one is going to remain on the same spot. The long range hopping allows me to go twice or hop twice, even if there is an electron in between. So in this case it's going to work a bit like a quantum tunneling, but it's actually just two sides. You can go, for example, also diagonally. Always preserve the same side. In the back we do have the quantum tunneling from before. Before we had to play with energy conservation. Now is a standard effect, meaning that you just have to pay how much it costs. For example, in this case I could quantum tunneling from here to there and always preserve the same spin. The mobility edge allows me to play one extra movement, even a blocked one. For example, in this case, I would be able to play a third movement in my turn. I had played the hopping and the physics defense, and I could play a third one, which I can choose to be, for example, the spin flip, or the quantum Newton's cradle, which is blocked, but this card allows me to play it. On the back we have the ionization that allows to destroy any electron on the board, in particular yours. In this case the electron really goes out of the game, it does not return to the source. The panning trap is another token that when placed allows electrons to come in, but no electron can go out. So in this case, I could not hop away. It's very useful to trap other players' electrons, but it does not completely block movement from happening in the game. For example, the quantum Newton's cradle can still happen in this situation. The first electron goes in, this one is locked, it cannot go out, but it's not going away, it's only the last one that is moving. So, despite the site being in a panning trap, the electron participated in the movement. On the back, we have an impurity vacancy. The impurity vacancy allows to destroy one site, and all the electrons there go back to the source. The tokens that were in contact with the site that was destroyed are also destroyed. Very importantly, this also allows to create a site anywhere as long as it's in contact with the other sites and aligned with the grid. The 0 point energy means that when you play these cards, all the other players must spend one energy, must put one energy into the table. And on the back, we have the dead short, meaning that you can choose one player to get one energy token from. Then we have the superposition. The superposition, it's a defensive move. Once you put an electron in superposition, you move it between the two spins. And then the electron will remain in superposition until we need to know what is its position. For example, imagine I was here, or for example, it might be better to have your electron there, and you want to hop to a site where my electron is in a superposition. You'd like to go to the spin down, but because I need to know where my electron was, I will measure it, and this will collapse. It's either going to be on a spin down or on a spin up. The one that placed the superposition gets to choose. In this case, I choose to be on the spin down, but because we cannot have two electrons sharing the same site, you are actually blocked from doing that movement, and you just lost it. So you tried to do a hopping, but because of the superposition you lost it, and now you must do some other movement. If you still have movements left, On the back, we have diffusion. Diffusion allows you to exchange two electrons that are nearby that share the same spin. This can be useful, for example, to get into somebody else's source. The heat source, it's another token card. Then when it's placed on a side, after the end of the turn, after each player's turn, the electrons in the spin down are going to come to the spin up. And this is going to be free of energy. That means that later in your turn, you can choose, for example, to spin flip it and get some energy back. Very importantly, if you have two electrons that share the same side with a heat source, you can choose the direction. On the back, you have a resistance. It's a token that you place between two sides. And every time that an electron is going to pass through this, or actually a pair of electrons, for example in a doublon, you get one energy. Quantum tunneling does not count for resistance because your electron is not actually passing through the resistance. One last thing about tokens. If you wish to remove them, you can just play the card of the token you're interested in removing, and instead of putting an extra one, you just take it out. So remind you, to play the doctorate version, you must block, you must play two movements. The first four always conserve the energy, and the fifth movement allows you to play effect cards. You can play them whenever you want during your turn, and how many you wish to, as long as you can afford them, of course. That's all. I hope you enjoyed the game, and make sure to check the info book to learn more about the physics. And if you like it, please rate us on BoardGameGeek. Stay entangled in the quantum realm.